If you close your eyes, you can still picture it. The flashing neon of Fremont Street, the jingle of quarters hitting metal, the smell of cigarette smoke and steak dinners under $5 signs. That was old Las Vegas, a place that felt dangerous, alive, human. But the city you remember doesn't exist anymore. The casinos are cleaner, the air feels colder, the laughter is forced, and the people who built this place, the dealers, the dreamers, the hustlers, are gone. Tonight, we're digging up the truth about what really happened to old Las Vegas and how the city that once promised freedom sold its soul for control. Before the billboards, before the billion-dollar towers, before the corporations turned the strip into a showroom, Las Vegas was a gangster's dream. It wasn't built by planners or investors. It was built by outlaws. The kind of men who carried pistols under their suits and called the mayor by his first name. When the mob ran the strip, Vegas had a soul. A dangerous one, sure, but a soul nonetheless. It was a city that didn't pretend to be respectable. It didn't care about image or brand management. It existed for one reason: to make money and have fun doing it. In the 1940s and 50s, Vegas was the Wild West reborn. Figures like Bugsy Siegel, Meyer Lansky, and Frank Rosenthal saw the desert not as wasteland, but as opportunity. They poured concrete, built palaces, and created something the world had never seen. A city where sin was the economy. You could drink, gamble, cheat, or reinvent yourself and no one would judge you for it. Vegas was liberation in neon form. And yes, it was dirty. The cash was laundered, the games were fixed, and the investors were men you didn't cross twice. But they knew something the modern corporations never understood. Vegas had to feel alive. It wasn't about efficiency, it was about energy. The Flamingo, the Stardust, the Sands, they weren't just hotels, they were personalities. Each one had its own identity, its own crowd, its own stories whispered after midnight. The waitresses knew your name, the dealers joked with you, the pit bosses had cigars and opinions. Even when you lost, you felt like you belonged. Money flowed freely, sometimes under the table, sometimes in briefcases flown in from Chicago or New York. But the city worked. Everyone got a cut. The mob built neighborhoods, funded schools, tipped heavy, and made sure the lights never went out. It was corruption with a conscience, a twisted kind of honor system that somehow held the whole mirage together. Then came the law, the federal crackdowns, the casino raids, the congressional hearings. The mobsters were driven out, replaced by businessmen in tailored suits and PR departments. To the outside world, it looked like progress. The city had cleaned up, but with that cleanup came something colder. When the mob left, the chaos left with them. The city became safer, but it also became duller. The danger that once gave Vegas its electricity was gone, replaced with sterile order and corporate polish. The rooms got nicer, the service got worse. Old Vegas was risky, but it was real. The men who ran it might have been criminals, but they understood one truth that the spreadsheets never will. People don't come to Vegas to behave. They come to feel alive. And when the mob packed up and left, they took that feeling with them. When the mob left, they didn't just abandon a city, they left a vacuum. And nature, especially in the Nevada desert, hates a vacuum. What filled that void wasn't a new kind of magic, it was management. The 1980s marked the end of the family-run casino and the rise of corporate Vegas. The same hands that once counted chips now held stock portfolios. The casinos that had character, places like the Stardust, the Frontier, and the Desert Inn, were sold off, gutted, or demolished. In their place rose towers of glass and marble with names that sounded more like hedge funds than havens of sin: MGM, Mirage, Bellagio. At first, it looked like progress. The mob was gone, the profits were up, and the city was finally respectable. But behind the gloss, something essential broke. The new owners didn't see Vegas as a living organism, they saw it as an asset class. In the old days, a casino was a family business. You knew the owner, you might even bump into him at the bar. If you were a regular, you got comped rooms, free drinks, maybe even a steak dinner on the house. It wasn't about policy, it was about people. When the corporations took over, that human connection disappeared overnight. The pit bosses turned into floor managers. The showgirls became brand ambassadors. The players became guests. Everything that once made Vegas feel personal was replaced by systems, spreadsheets, and slogans. By the 1990s, the transformation was complete. Wall Street had discovered the desert gold mine, and the Strip became a theme park for adults. The Mirage, built by Steve Wynn in 1989, was the prototype. A polished, family-friendly fantasy that swapped grit for glitz. The idea spread like wildfire. Within a decade, the Strip was lined with replicas of Paris, Venice, New York, and ancient Rome. Vegas stopped being Vegas. It became a collection of imitations. To keep shareholders happy, the corporation started squeezing resort fees, parking charges, service surcharges. Every inch of the guest experience was monetized. A city that once gave away shrimp cocktails just to keep you smiling now billed you for Wi-Fi. And while the profits grew, the culture withered. And the old casino families who ran their businesses with instinct and pride were gone, replaced by executives who couldn't tell a craps table from a coffee table. The dealers stopped joking, the hosts stopped caring. The illusion of luxury replaced the feeling of belonging. This was the fall of the family business. Not just the mobsters, but the bartenders, the pit bosses, the musicians, the local dreamers who once made the city tick. Vegas used to be built on loyalty. Now it's built on leverage. The city stopped being run by people who loved it and started being run by people who only owned it. And when that happened, something in the desert died. Quietly, behind the neon. By the early 2000s, Las Vegas had done something unthinkable. It got boring. The city that once celebrated vice, chaos, and risk suddenly wanted to be respectable. The rough edges were sanded down, the shadows illuminated, the danger scrubbed out with disinfectant. The new Vegas didn't smell like cigarettes and cheap perfume anymore. It smelled like air conditioning and policy. Smoking areas were reduced. Security cameras multiplied. The cocktail waitresses wore designer uniforms instead of sequins. The casino floors, once alive with laughter and the clinking of quarters, turned eerily quiet, replaced by digital screens and muted corporate playlists. Vegas, the rebel city, had become obsessed with control. It began innocently enough, with safety. Casinos wanted to clean up their image to attract more families and international travelers. The wild mob-run days were ancient history, and executives wanted a brand that could be sold to sponsors, stockholders, and cruise ship retirees. So they started sanitizing everything that made Vegas Vegas. First came the family-friendly experiment of the 1990s, the theme park era. Circus Circus, Excalibur, and Treasure Island promised to make Sin City safe for kids. But that illusion collapsed fast. Families didn't want to spend their vacation in a smoky casino, and gamblers didn't want to share blackjack tables with screaming toddlers. The experiment failed, but the impulse behind it, to make Vegas respectable, never went away. Instead, they sanitized the city for a different audience. The corporate elite. High roller suites replaced $20 rooms. Celebrity chefs replaced buffets. Branded mega clubs replaced dingy lounges. The whole city was reprogrammed to serve fewer people at higher prices. Fun became luxury. Wild became exclusive. But something else was lost in the process. The sense of risk, of spontaneity, of rebellion. Old Vegas had rules, sure, but they were loose, flexible, human. A pit boss might bend them if he liked your attitude. A waitress might slip you an extra drink. There was room to breathe, to live, to break things a little. In modern Vegas, there's no room for anything unpredictable. Everything is tracked, monitored, logged. The moment you walk into a casino, the cameras know who you are, what you've played, and how much you're likely to lose. You're not a guest, you're a data point. Even the shows have lost their edge. Lounge acts and magicians were replaced by precision-engineered experiences that feel more like tech demos than performances. It's all polished, choreographed, and painfully safe. Vegas didn't just clean up its act, it sterilized it. It forgot that what drew people here in the first place wasn't the comfort or the convenience. It was the chaos, the chance to lose control for one night and laugh about it in the morning. The city still calls itself Sin City, but the sin is gone. What's left is an imitation, perfectly clean, perfectly managed, and perfectly lifeless. Because the truth is, you can't sanitize rebellion, you can only kill it. The dealers used to smile, the waitresses used to laugh, the pit bosses knew your name, and if you were down on your luck, they might quietly slide you a comped buffet to keep your spirits up. Vegas wasn't kind, but it had heart. The people who worked there believed in the illusion that everyone deserved a little piece of magic, even if it was built on sand. But those people, the dreamers, are gone. The city didn't just lose its gamblers, it lost its soul bearers, the employees, the entertainers, the locals who made the neon feel human, the ones who showed up every night to keep the mirage alive. Once upon a time, working in Vegas meant something. A dealer could buy a home, raise a family, live comfortably. A showgirl could perform 6 nights a week and be treated like royalty. The city took care of its own because the people were the product. Their smiles, their energy, their charisma. That's what made the tourists return. Then came the mergers, the automation, the layoffs. Casinos started replacing staff with screens. Check-ins went digital. Bartenders were swapped out for drink dispensing robots. Entire departments disappeared overnight. Concierge desks, valet teams, room service, entertainment booking. The human touch that defined old Vegas was quietly deleted in favor of efficiency. And the few who stayed, they were pushed to the brink. The union contracts weakened. The tips shrank, the workloads doubled. The hospitality that once felt effortless now feels forced, tired, hollow. Behind the gleaming towers, Vegas workers are struggling like never before. The cost of living skyrocketed. Rents that used to be $800 are now $1,800 or more. Service jobs can't keep up. The same employees who once made guests feel like kings now drive Uber after midnight just to afford groceries. The performers didn't fare much better. Lounge singers, magicians, dancers, gone. The small shows that gave the city its heartbeat were replaced by multi-million-dollar residencies featuring global superstars flown in for corporate deals. The locals who once were Vegas have been reduced to footnotes in their own city, and with them went something money can't replace: authentic joy. Vegas used to be alive because its people believed in the illusion. They knew it was fake, sure, but they also knew how to make it feel real. Now, no one's pretending anymore. Everyone's just surviving. The laughter that once filled the casino floors has been replaced by background music and polite customer service scripts. The death of the dreamer isn't just about jobs, it's about identity. Vegas used to be a city for the people who work there. Now it's a brand that tolerates them. And without those dreamers, the waitresses with raspy laughs, the dealers who remembered your lucky number, the cab drivers with stories better than any show, the city feels empty, no matter how bright the lights shine. Because the truth is, you can rebuild the hotels, you can rebrand the strip, but you can't replace the people who made the desert come alive. Vegas didn't just lose its workers, it lost its believers. Maybe the most surprising thing about Las Vegas isn't that it lost its soul. It's that in some small corners, people are trying to bring it back. They don't have billion-dollar budgets or corporate sponsors. They don't have fountains synced to pop songs or celebrity residencies. What they have is grit and memory. Drive off the strip, past the LED billboards and designer storefronts, and you'll find it. The flicker of old Vegas still alive in the dark. A smoky dive bar where the bartender has been pouring drinks since 1983. A tiny downtown casino that still serves $2 beers and lets you light up at the table. A family-run steakhouse where the maitre d' knows your name before you sit down. It's not glamorous, but it's real. And in a city built on illusion, realness feels revolutionary. These are the survivors of the purge. The last guardians of a city that once thrived on imperfection. They don't call it nostalgia, they call it sanity. There's a quiet rebellion happening under the neon. Independent performers are setting up their own shows in warehouses and lounges, bringing back the grit and humor that corporate Vegas erased. Locals are reclaiming downtown, the Fremont East District, the Arts District, turning empty buildings into jazz bars, thrift shops, and theaters. They know they'll never compete with the Strip, and they don't want to. They're building something smaller, rougher, but honest. Even the tourists are starting to notice. They come to Vegas expecting spectacle, but they leave craving something else. Connection. The kind that old Vegas offered effortlessly. You can see it in the reviews, the vlogs, the online posts. We wanted to feel the real Vegas, and maybe that's where the hope lies. Not in bringing back the past, but in remembering why it worked. Vegas wasn't magic because of the lights or the money. It was magic because it let you forget your place in the world. Because for one night, you could walk into a casino and nobody cared who you were, how much you made, or where you came from. It was democratic chaos, and that was the dream. The corporations will never give that back, but people might, because as long as there's one dealer still cracking jokes at 3 a.m., one lounge singer still belting her heart out to a half-empty room, or one tourist still chasing luck with a grin instead of a spreadsheet, Vegas isn't dead. It's just waiting for someone to remember that the city wasn't built on data, but on desire. That it wasn't about money, it was about feeling alive. The Strip might belong to the corporations now, but the spirit of old Vegas, smoky, reckless, beautiful, and still glows faintly in the desert night. You just have to look past the lights to see it.